Welcome to another episode of Another Man's Shoes. We've got a great episode for you today. We're actually being joined by Professor Alan Shabaro, former US Special Forces soldier. He's joining us all the way from America, and he's going to take us through his journey from joining the military, being one of the first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu soldiers in the US Army and one of the first completely in the US Special Forces, through to leaving and where his experiences have taken him, and now what he does to help other veterans now and the wider community to engage in the sport. So, Alan, thanks for coming on the show, and we welcome you on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, I suppose we got to start and say that you're our first guest that we've had over from America, from the United States. Whereabouts is it that you're based over there?
The great Republic of Texas.
So, is Texas actually a part of America, or is that its whole own country in its own right?
Well, we did secede from the United States in the mid 1800s, but it only lasted a few years. So, but some people still hold on to that. So it's just it's more of a pride thing than anything else.
What's it like over there at the moment with obviously everything that's going on in the world and the pandemic? Are you feeling it?
Out of all the states, I think, and again, I'm not sure how the other ones have been responding, but especially just lately, the been a bit more combative against the regulations. So, I mean, compared to California, especially, I think pretty much most of the United States is doing their part, of course, but to a realistic extent. You cannot shut down all the businesses and expect them to do well after. So we got to think about, as it's going on now, yes, the safety precautions. But then again, I think the majority of the mentality is everyone understands the risk and the risk associated with maintaining your business and with being a patron. As a customer, you understand it, you accept it, and you move on. Yeah. Versus having the state dictate, no, you're on full lockdown, you cannot leave, you cannot, run your business. So I think I got kind of lucky, and I think the people in Texas got kind of lucky with the way they're handling it.
I mean, it's a huge state, isn't it, Texas? And I imagine you're fairly well spread apart.
Yes.
There's a lot of space there. So
it is.
Not like the UK, we're all sort of living on top of each other, which doesn't help.
Yeah.
So take us back to your childhood. Are you Texas born and bred, and that's where you've always been?
No, actually, I was raised overseas. So my father was a Department of Defense civilian, and he was a comptroller for the Army and the Navy. So we got to go places that most just regular military dependents didn't go. So I lived in Saudi Arabia for about 5 years, Italy for about 7, Germany 5, and went to school in Austria as well. And when I was 19 is when I moved back to the States. I was 18 at the time, actually. And I just did a little bit of so in the States, most people, when they graduate high school, they backpack around Europe. My thing was I'm just going to backpack around the U.S., kind of thing. At the time I was really big into snowboarding. So having to see all the pictures in these snowboard magazines and everything, when I was really into it, it became a quick bucket list type thing where I need to go and actually go to these different mountains to go snowboarding in. So that was the first thing I did. I wanted to go to California. I wanted to go to Washington State, Colorado. And so that's what I did actually after I graduated high school. I went around the West Coast and got to spend a year or a season actually down in Bear Valley, which is so not Big Bear, but Bear Valley is like right next to Tahoe. So up there, and it was great. Then I went to go visit my parents. Went to a air show and talked to a recruiter. And the next day I was in the recruitment office and talking about signing up. So a little bit impulsive.
And so, what's one of the biggest sort of memories you've got as sort of growing up? Is there anything that's really stuck with you, like places that you went and experienced?
Oh, I mean, some of the biggest things I got to experience, like, for example, when the wall came down, that was a huge thing. I was actually in Germany when that happened. So I wasn't in Berlin, but you could pretty much feel the energy all throughout the entire country. And then being able to see like something as magnificent as that, and being able to experience it, firsthand, being there in Germany and feeling like the entire, social aspect, and, it changed drastically. So I got to be able to see that. And that's something I've always appreciated.
That's huge. That was 1992.
There's so many different things that really can't list off once. I mean, got my personal memories with my best friend, just going snowboarding, at midnight, we used to climb the mountain and, be the first ones to lay tracks. Those are personal memories that, for me are that was some of the most precious memories that I have. But yeah, I mean, something that everyone can kind of understand, relate to, is definitely that's one of the biggest ones, for sure.
And growing up, you're always an outdoorsman, very adventurous, sort of into your exercise?
No, actually. I was really big into skateboarding before that. It's just when we moved from Italy to Germany, it was very cold and it rained a lot, so it was very limited. So that's how I got into snowboarding, because the seasons were much longer. I was literally at the base of the mountain in Germany, so there really was. Again, as fortunate as I could possibly be for something that, like snowboarding. But honestly, I really didn't care. I mean, because I was more aerodynamic as a little guy anyway. So I was walking around about, I don't know, maybe 65 to 70 kilos, in high school. At my first tournament, I remember it being at 22 years old, and I weighed in 147 pounds. So I didn't even get into to weightlifting and anything like that until actually after my first enlistment. And I just got tired of being small. So I started lifting then, and, I started lifting actually for jiu-jitsu. And then it just became something I just wanted to change myself, my entire identity. I just didn't want to be, Skeletor or the orange on a toothpick guy anymore. So I really spent a lot of time on, lifting.
The American bases that I've been on, the gym facilities there are fantastic. They really
incredible.
Really put some money into that.
Yeah.
You could be in the middle of a war zone.
Especially lately.
That's great though, isn't it? I mean, it's great for mental health. It's great for fitness, and it's what you need.
Absolutely.
You can't just be sitting around trying to make your own homemade gym, which is pretty much what we ended up with. A couple of old truck tires and a mop handle, trying to put it all together. So did you, when did you join the military then? What year was that?
1995, September 5th. That's when I reported boot camp. And so my initial MOS, military occupational specialty, was a lightweight vehicle mechanic. So it was kind of an odd story. I went in and I was told, hey, don't worry about it. You get this job, and when you get there, you can tell them, because I went in initially wanting to be an interpreter. I spoke a few languages, having lived overseas. So I was going to go in as an interpreter and, end up back in Vicenza so I could, I know the area, I spoke the language, and I could, go back to, snowboarding, which is something I really wanted to do. Well, when the recruiter actually had me going and filling out the paperwork, he said, yeah, just go ahead and fill this out. And, the interpreter school, I guess, is across the street. And I was not going to have they'll sign you right over, which was the biggest friggin' lie ever. So I ended up as a lightweight vehicle mechanic for the first few years of my enlistment. And it was all on things that, the Cut V, the first generation of the Humvee, the Deuce and a Half, all these vehicles that they retired within like 5-6 years. So it was pretty much like an obsolete MOS, for the things I was being trained on. So I don't really feel that there was much going on. This was the end of '90s. So they're Bosnia and Kosovo were all like dying down. Somalia was kind of, history at that sense, in that sense where it was, 7-8 years ago, before my time type thing. And there wasn't any conflicts going on. So I got out. I jumped into reserves for the benefits and for the school, and ended up just going to school down in San Marcos, Texas, Southwest Texas State University. And while I was actually at Fort Hood is when I started getting into jiu-jitsu. So that was a conflict of interest. I wanted to get my education, but at the same time, I still wanted to train. And that I'd really gotten addicted to it. So I ended up transferring schools up to Dallas, and that's how I ended up in this area. So I could train with the only one black belt in the entire state. So nowadays, there's black belts. You can drive 2 miles, you can find another black belt. Back in the day, there was literally one for the entire state of Texas. So pickings were slim. So I decided to move up here so I could actually continue to train jiu-jitsu and continue my education.
What was it you were studying at the time?
International relations and foreign affairs.
Okay. You put that into practice since?
No.
Maybe you've put it into practice with an M4.
Pretty much. That diplomacy, method seems a bit more my style, I guess. But it was a lot had to do with understanding the different branches of government in foreign countries, their policies. And by the time I was kind of getting to the weeds of things is after 9/11 kicked off, and I dropped out of school so I could actually go back in active duty. I was very impulsive. I shouldn't have dropped out because it actually took me a couple of years to make the transfer over so I could go back in because I was in a reserve contract. But made the best of it while I was there, and I was trying to wait on. I kept training, and I was actually building up a lot of training, and basically I had gone down to, while I was waiting to go back in active duty to try out for special forces. I was training a lot with a guy that's here locally, Travis Luter. And at the time, we're about the same size. So I started, getting up to 190, 200 pounds. And so there was one guy that was the manager for Travis Luter and Matt SERE and myself. So there was only 3 people that he was taking on. And so I had to make the decision if I wanted to go active duty and try out for special forces, which is a complete unknown, or I could take my chances and go pro in MMA, which again is a complete unknown. So after months and months of waiting to get a selection date to get an opportunity to go try out, I literally got an offer saying, okay, well, we have, this lined up for you. You got about 6 weeks to make your decision. And I still hadn't heard from my unit about a date. So I almost made the decision, just, drop that and just go pro in MMA. And it wasn't something for me in the end. But I literally, within like a couple of weeks after I got that news, I got a notice from my unit saying, okay, we got you in for a spring selection date. And so I was ecstatic about that. And so I decided to not go pro in MMA and to actually go and try out for SF.
Fantastic. So within the US forces, like in the British military, if you want to go SF, SAS, SBS, what have you, you have to be a regular soldier first, and you've got your parent unit. And so then you go and try to become a member of the SAS, and if you fail, you end up going back to your parent unit. Is that the same in the US, or can you join directly from Civvy Street or from the reserves and go SF?
So they do have or at least they did. I'm not sure if they still do. But they had a program called the 18 X-ray program, which you can go in as a possibility to make it on there. And so it's a great recruiting tool because the ones that don't make it, they put them at the Army's needs.
Okay.
So if they're short on cooks, if they're short on infantry, whatever it might be, they have to sign a document saying, well, if I don't make it through SF, then I have to go to whatever the Army needs me to do for the next 4 years. But if they do make it, it's a phenomenal program because they literally get to go through basic AIT as infantry. They get to go through like a pre RASP, which is the Ranger Assessment and Selection Program. And then they get to go to RASP and then Ranger School. Once they get done with Ranger School, they get to come to a pre-selection called SOP-C, which is a Special Operations Preparatory Course. And then they get to go to selection. So they really set it up for them to actually make it. So it's not something where in this program they want you to fail because it looks good on numbers and they want you to succeed. But again, the person has to be able and willing to do so. So for the guys that made it, especially the earlier program, I thought it was great. Where I started seeing it starting to fall apart is when they were looking at trying to make more numbers. And it showed what kind of quality was coming out when you're trying to mass produce special operations. And so they dialed it down drastically after that. I'm not sure where the program is now, but when I left, that was they realized that you can't mass produce special operations. And they started dialing it down, a lot down and making things a lot more stringent and so forth. So they cleaned it up.
I think that's a wise choice. And I think that's something that happened over here. I know there was a couple of years ago, the SBS tried a direct entry route where you could be a Royal Marine Commando, finish training, and then go straight onto SBS selection. And what they soon realised was it was causing the guys more injuries because had this such intense build-up. And also, but they lacked that operational experience where they worked within their troops, within their squadrons, and built that camaraderie, and they'd learned the mistakes. They'd been the young guy on the ground and built themselves up. So I'm not sure they do that over here anymore either. So I suppose you went straight through onto selection. What's that involve?
So selection is very much a gut check, but it's also classified. It's what's called a gentleman's course. So a gentleman's course is kind of like if you go to Ranger School from day one, they're yelling at you, they're beating you down, they're just on your ass the entire time. For selection, it's entirely different, with the exception of the first 2 days. So the first 2 days, what they're trying to do is just weed you out. And they collect a lot of numbers on those couple of days. And it's basically just kind of like flush out the people that won't make it like in the next few days. And after that, it's literally on you. So the instructors are, basically they give you the instruction, get all your instructions from the whiteboard and, do what you can. So the whiteboard was basically all our task condition and standards of what we're doing while we're there. So we had, and it changed at 2 a.m, where we had like some night op or whatever it is. And so you always had somebody up, checking the board every 15 minutes. Because it might be, 3 o'clock formation, or you have like 20 minutes to get all your stuff to be at a certain, rendezvous point, before we do another exercise. But the first week was a lot of PT. They have your PT tests, and they go through like a quick land nav course, like how to do so. And the second week is very much individual, and they have a lot of your from the time that you get there. After the first 4 days, you have a 65 pounds ruck on your back that is pretty much attached to your back the entire time that you're there. And then you have to have water and so forth. But they have, it doesn't matter what the event might be, they have guys with scales that are there to make sure that you're always carrying your load. And so the second week has a lot to do with individual tasks and doing orienteering, which is the land navigation courses. So you have just the star course was definitely one of the man makers, I guess, in that you had 8 points that you had to find within 8 hours, and a set number of hours that they wouldn't disclose. I finished mine in 8, so I don't know how good that was, but I made it, so I was happy. And so you have 4 points that you have to get at night, 4 points they have to get in the daytime, and they range. So your first point could be, who knows, an easy one, like 6 kilometers away. Good, made it. But then the second one, for me at least, was 24 kilometers away. Right. So I had the very first one was very easy. I'm like, I got this. It's smoke, and then I had to go like the opposite end of the course, to get my other point, and then all the way back, and then some for the next one. So it was definitely a kick of the ding ding, I'll tell you that. And you're constantly rucking. And then the last week is team week, where you get paired up in a team of usually between 10 to 12, and you have team oriented events. For example, you'll have like one in the morning where you'll have to find a certain location, which is 7 to 8 kilometers away. You have 2 hours to complete the event, and then which usually includes a movement of 8 to 10 kilometers, and then you have to make the 7 8 kilometer trek back. And then the events varied between like a down pilot, where you had like a certain amount of time to get and of course it was a giant duffel bag with full of sand and just heavy as hell, like 250 pounds, and you had to carry them certain distance and make them safe and so forth. The 3-wheel Jeep, the barrel carry, which is one of those 55-gallon barrels that you had to figure out. You have like ropes and a couple of tires and some steel rods to try to make something to make it for your time. It wasn't just the events, it's how you handled the events, which was a big thing. So there were sometimes the team fights, and the instructors are always there, the cadre is always there. They're just in the wood lines, watching you and writing down notes. So that's what I mean by a gentleman's course, is that they never interfered. If you failed, it was because of your what you did. And one of the most unique parts about selection for special forces in the Army was that you actually can make it the entire 3 weeks. And they're called 21-day non-selects. So you had guys that, let's say you're a complete stud. You made it out there. You smoked the rucks. You smoked the land nav. Your PT test was off the charts, but you're a complete fucking asshole, and everybody can't stand you. And you got peered out.
That's it. Your face doesn't fit.
You're out. Because if you think about the primary job, which is foreign internal defense, you're out in remote areas, for an extended period of time with the same group of people. You have to be able to play well with others, and not you're just setting yourself up in the mission up for failure. So I thought that was a great way of making sure that you didn't have a complete asshole that's with you from the get-go. I thought that was a great way of doing it.
And how long's the overall course after this? When you finish this sort of 3-week period, you then go on to sort of further weapons training, your jumps course, if you're not already paraqualified.
Yeah. So after selection allows you to attend the qualification course. So then you have a SFQC, which is a Special Forces Qualification Course. So they shuffle these around sometimes, but for when I went, it was selection, and then we had small unit tactics, which everyone I talked to that's been to Ranger School was saying, yeah, it's Ranger School with 1 more hour sleep and 1 more MRE. So it was 9 weeks long. Had everything to do with everything infantry related. So, ambushes, laying down L shapes and you name it. Um, so it was 9 weeks of small unit tactics. And then right after that was SERE, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, which to me, honestly, was probably one of the best and worst schools I've ever been to. But truly was something you never wanted to miss. So always, if anyone gets a chance to do that, I highly recommend it. But it was basically, how to survive, the survival school, of course. And then basically what they had is create an entire situation where you are captured and you get to use, the things that you actually learned. So there's a difference between being captured by, a government that, we're actually allies with, or ones that we don't have any type of association with, but as an established government, versus being captured by terrorists, and, how you actually have to, go about, staying alive basically, and coming back with honor is always the main objective. So, and then you end up in in a situation where you have to, in your mind, or what they're telling you is that you have to make it, to the border to safety. And you have people that are, from this, foreign nation that we are, at war with, and they're after you. And this is how well that the training is actually done. There's a state prison, excuse me, that's that wasn't more than like 60 or 70 miles away. And what they did was they coordinated with the SF. And so the people that were in the prison, they had their search teams out there looking, and we were supposed to be the inmates. And so they had escaped inmates. So they're getting their training on trying to track us down. We're being told that, hey, this is the military that's tracking us down, and they're going to take you to a POW camp. So it was, phenomenal coordination between, the two entities that really made it phenomenal training. So we had dog teams, we had helicopters overhead. I mean, if no one told us, or if someone actually told us, hey, this is live, you would really think so, because they really got that far into it. But you end up in, everyone ends up at the camp at the end, and everyone gets to experience going through, the little POW camp that you got there. But you tend to realize one of the most hard-hitting moments that I had, emotional as well, was enduring through all that. And when you're going through it, if it's being struck, and having to break the ice and stand in freezing cold water, as they humiliate you. These are things that they're doing every day. And so by the time you're actually freed, you have definitely a sense of freedom in a sense. But that goes away in an instant when you have they brought in 4 or 5 actual POWs from Vietnam. And when they start telling their stories about how they were in for, their POWs for 3, 4, or 5 years, you're putting your head down in shame going, shit, I just did 5 days and I'm fucking complaining. And this guy did 5 years, I just, your mouth shuts really fast, and you realize and you have a entirely new respect for POWs. It's insane. So, the amount that I gained out of that course itself was incredible. Moving from SERE, you have your next school is your military occupational specialty. So for me, it was I was a special forces weapons sergeant. So you learn everything there is about weapons, foreign, domestic weapons, tactics, strategies, all the way up to even mortar fire, and is so much fun. I hardly even realized that I was actually in a job, getting paid for that. It was, man, dream come true. So after weapons training comes language training, which is probably the hardest part about it. In my opinion, was just because you have, 8 hours a day, 6 days a week of, special operations language training. And then you had the actual language training that we had. So there was 2 different tests that we had to take, and they shortened up the language training. So we literally had 6 months to actually learn what most people in the past had 18 months to do. And so that's why they did it 6 days a week instead of 5 days a week. And they lowered the standards a little bit, but it was crazy amount of stress because you didn't want to get that far and then fail language, and that's why you get kicked out of the Q course, so that's a kick in the nuts. But it was literally so much to get in all at once. I mean, that was stress. And right after language training is Robin Sage. So Robin Sage is a 3-week culmination exercise where they put everything that you did and everything that your team has done in a mock simulated mission. So the great part about this is that you have these, it's like a tri-county area that has been supporting this program for generations, like 3 generations now. And I didn't realize like how embedded it was until we were actually in this one area where we had to get, we're trying to gather intelligence. So we're in civilian clothes. And I literally get pulled over and I'm like, shit, I don't have my driver's license or anything with me. I'm in this course. And so I'm starting to panic. I'm like, I can't get kicked out of this course. You know what I mean? They're going to take me in. They're going to arrest me on that. I don't have a driver's license. I don't have any proof, that I'm in the military. So this lady comes and knocks on the door, the officer. And I was just like, shit. And so my buddy is sitting with me. I'm like, just let me try to figure this out. So before I even got to say anything, she was like, papers, please. So I was like, wait, what? No one ever says papers, man. What? And I was trying to figure them out. She looks down. She was like, papers, please. You're in Pineland. Where are your papers? I'm like, oh, that I got. So she was actually involved in it.
Part of the process.
So we had the police department, fire department. We had pretty much everybody in these communities. It was incredible how much support, was to make this like realistic. So they really, put a lot into it, and it turned out, really well. And so it's, that was the, once you make it through Robin Sage, then that's the end of it.
So you get to the end of the course and you get awarded your Green Beret. Is it you? Mm-hmm. So that's a proud moment. That's a pinnacle in many people's life.
It is, absolutely. So for me, I went in as a 18 Charlie as an engineer, and it was a one job initially. I just, not that I wasn't, to the extent of what they do, like building and everything else was completely out of like nothing. I don't mean to sound like a shit, but I just wasn't interested in that. I wanted to do the weapon stuff, but I was in that. So, I tried to make the best out of it. Halfway through the course, though, on the engineer course, I actually didn't make it. And I failed one of my tests. And so I was out. Luckily enough, I actually had somebody that I knew. Well, a bunch of people came out of the woodworks that I knew, and they wrote, recommendation letters for me to stay in the course. So I got really lucky with that. Managed to stay in, and so the caveat to that was I had to be a troop sergeant major for all the rest of the Q course that I was in. And that's something you just don't want, because on top of everything you have to do, you have to make sure everyone's there for formation. You have to make sure that everyone's filling out the freaking leave forms. So they're going to take leave. And if someone gets arrested, guess what? Your happy ass is getting up there, calling the cadre, meeting them up at the police station. So all this extra stress but I took it in a heartbeat just because they would let me stay in the course. But out of that, I managed to get the leadership award for my class, which was, on top of just making it, being awarded, a leadership award, and making it was just I was on cloud nine.
Yeah, icing absolutely. On the cake. So what year was this?
I graduated in May of 2007.
So that was when it was really starting to heat up overseas. Iraq's going full tilt. Afghanistan starting to get quite noisy over there. So imagine you were on back-to-back tours and getting out in the sandpit.
Yeah. So I literally, when I graduated, I was actually in the National Guard, and it was the only way I could actually get over there, being on a reserve contract. So I ended up going and back to the National Guard unit saying, "Hey, thanks guys, got an offer to go active duty," and turned in my paperwork there. Came back, packed up, moved over the last of my things, and I signed into group one day. The next day I was, battalion signing in, and then I was in Iraq. So I met my team downrange, and I didn't get a full tour. The first one, it was a little bit over half, and it was a great experience though, because it was a lot of noise going off in Solder City, which was like the wild, wild west back then.
It was. Tell us, what sort of ops were you involved in over there? What was the general day-to-day?
So the unit I ended up with was 3rd Special Forces Group SIF. So the SIF is Commanders in Extremis Force. So the way that works is that each group has one company that's a SIF, and the SIF is they have two primary job specifications, which is hostage rescue and direct action, which are encompassed within the counterterrorism and counterinsurgency. These are the only units that so we got most of our we pretty much fell under JSOC. As everyone from 3rd Group was going to Afghanistan, my company was going to Iraq. And so we were kind of that in between. We were doing unilateral missions with CAG constantly, and all the rotations side by side. And we were running missions with so we stood up and trained the ICTF and the Iraqi commandos. So that was kind of like 5th Special Forces Group and 3rd Special Forces Group were the guys that stood those guys up. And they ended up being, phenomenal. So each SIF, that was one of the things that was kind of not disappointed in by any means, but it would have been nice to be able to do like in this 12 strong, riding around in horses, and that's something I never got to do. But not saying that I regretted riding, but it definitely would have been nice when I get to ride horses. At least get some pictures. Riding horses.
Well, you're a Texan, so I suppose that's in your blood.
Yeah.
Did you do much with the British?
Say again?
Did you do much with multinational, with the British out there? Or were you very much US focused?
So we actually, not very much. I did when we were in, what was that? Diwania. There was the Polish Grob, and the Australian SES was out there. But that was only a couple of days, working with them. And then, other than that, it was mainly U.S. forces and Iraqi Special Operations Forces. So we never get to really do a lot of unilateral missions with the any other special operations from other countries. Not much.
It's like things like Task Force Black out there. They were quite big at the time, doing a lot of the door kicking and out every night.
Yeah, that was us.
I can imagine you could kick a ball in pretty well.
So the way that the colors work, so like green is CAG, blue is DevGru, which is like the SEAL Team 6, and brown was the Special Operations, the Aviation Regiment, and then you had orange, which was Intel, and black was the SIFs. So that was us.
I mean, that was a busy time.
Yes,
guys there,
very much.
It was just relentless. So how many tours of Iraq did you get in?
3.
And what's the tour length for you guys?
Say again?
How long is a tour for you?
So my longest one was 5 months. But it's an average between 4.5 months. And the reason being is for the tempo. So like, for example, in 2000, I didn't have any recordings like how many I did in 2007, but in 2008, we were in Tikrit and Taji area to do missions. And so the first 2 months, I marked on tick marks every time we went out the wire. And we ended up doing 53 missions in 60 days. So the tempo was very high. The only time that we actually didn't go out is when we had like really bad sandstorms where we couldn't have rotary wing or fixed wing flying above us, any type of drones that would provide security on top. And that was pretty much about it. And the other time that we had, we were had a lot of work to do. So, but it was because the tempo was so high that our rotations were short.
It was. Talking about the sandstorms then, I've never experienced anything like those. That sand.
Never.
Absolutely everywhere.
So it seemed like it was, at times you woke up and it was like it was dark, almost like nighttime.
Yeah.
And it was like 3:00 in the afternoon. That's how thick it got sometimes. Didn't maintain it that way the whole time, but going by, 10, 15 seconds at a time gets really dark, and then, it keeps moving around. It was crazy.
Yeah, there was a huge storm in 2003 when we also went across the border for the original, I think you guys called it Iraqi Freedom, we called it Optelic. The whole war stopped for a couple of days because the sandstorm was that bad that nothing could move. Wow. Nothing was living in that. Got some great photos. So did you get Afghanistan in, or was it mainly Iraq?
No. Never got to go to Afghanistan. Iraq was everything.
When you finished with Iraq, you then came back to the States and decided to demobilize, go back to civilian street?
So there was a couple of things, like during the rotations. It wasn't just one thing in particular. It was a few things. One of them was, realizing that there was guys that had been on the team way longer than me, way more experienced, having 7, 8 rotations in, and it was guys that I was definitely looking up to. But at the same time, there was like one of the guys was 4 years younger than me, and he looked like he was already in his 50s. Hunched over, walking around. And here's a perfect example. One of the guys that it was my first senior, Walker Booth. He was a 3rd generation Green Beret, and made wicked smart. Made his E8 in like 12 years, which is just unheard of. Took over his own team. Was a phenomenal leader. Was a phenomenal operator, and there was, he had, in Halo, wall locker jumps is just everything that you have, and jumping from that height. And he would still be doing all his wall locker jumps with his team. And it was sad because he said there's the pinnacle moment and in a Green Beret's life is, when he gets to take his team. And he had already been dealing with back problems, but refused to go. And to go get checked out, and he was just living on cocktails, Flexerol, Percocet, oxycodone, popping 3 or 4 of those, one in the daytime, or in the mornings, one in the afternoon, maybe some at night to go to sleep. And that was his life that he got used to. The meds at the time, especially, were easy to come by. They're pretty much easy to come by now, but they're just always readily available. So he would rather, deal with the pain, and come to find out was a broken back, rather than give up his team. So I didn't want to. I didn't want to become that type of person where everything revolved around doing a job, and then at the risk of not just my physical health, my mental health as well, damaged for years to come after, possibly the rest of my life. I mean, you get thrown out of a Humvee after an IED. That limp isn't going away. There's a lot of different things, that I'm dealing with now just from the short time in. But I can't imagine staying in for, in that same pace which is a pace that I loved. So I knew I would get sucked into it. But, being single, no wife, no kids, I absolutely loved deploying. I was just into it. But having so many close calls within such a short time frame, and then realizing that there was things I still wanted to do, was what me came to the final realization. I'm like, well, I can't. I don't need to walk away in shame. I've put in my time, as a patriot, and put in my time and then some. So I've done my part, and I've done my part with pride, and there's no sense in feeling ashamed of bowing out gracefully. And that's what I ended up doing.
Yeah, I think that's very wise. I think you've sort of seen that. Too many people sit there and they sit back and they bury their head in the sand, and they're broken. I think you've got a family, you've got a future career, you've got the rest of your life to live. You can't be a slave drive just to one particular career. So have you struggled sort of since you've come out with mental health and with physical problems as a result of your service?
A lot. A lot of them was just being receptive to the old solution of taking Zoloft and everything else. But the PTSD that I was dealing with was, it wasn't for anything that I'd done downrange, because I didn't have any regrets or any remorse. That I knew that everything I did had to be done. Where mine came from was, having an understanding that I couldn't have changed the outcome of some of the guys, lives that lost their lives out there. And I kind of hung on to it was, how is it that, a guy that has the least amount of experience on the team, or even in the company at the time, can walk away unscathed. And then you have guys that were, years much more experience, not make it. And then I started kind of, going into whirlwind with, the meds and everything else, going, well, is that because it was my fault? Did I fail to do something? Did I not, if I would have taken 2 steps to the left instead of 3 to the right, would they still be here? And those thoughts start to consume you. And then, on top of that, you actually have, for me, it was the stress of starting new business. And I was so focused into trying to get that done. And still dealing with this initially and not realizing what it was. I was just kind of putting it aside and I'll just sleep it off. And I already been on Ambien for years. It just got worse and worse. I was taking 2 Ambien, 3-4 Benadryl, 6-pack of beer just to get 3-4 hours night sleep. And I was perfectly content if that happened. At least I got some sleep. But I think it was definitely a realization. So one of the big things that I realized was I was kind of turned out numb. It was was coming back from I was actually living at the school at the time, but I didn't want to see it fail and have that much money. But it was something I was, set on doing. So it was an industrial area. I was driving down. This white pickup comes up behind me, comes up right up to my bumper and slows back down. Right up to my bumper, slows it back down. And I was going about 10 miles over the speed limit. So I wasn't going too slow. This guy was just fucking with me. And I had no idea why or anything. So I wasn't going to play. And so he did it 3-4 times. So I just sped up and I turned over into the next turn, to the next block, and turned around real fast. And, I did a press check on my gun, make sure that, it was loaded. I took stepped 1 foot out the truck and opened the door. And it was just, these guys turned into the driveway the road where I was at. And they stopped in front of me. And the only thing I was looking for was just seeing who's going to get it first, who's going to step out. And then the other person's getting it second. That's it. That was the only thing I was thinking. So they were there for, a few seconds. They decided to bolt out. And so they backed up and pulled away. And I just remember the whole time that was actually downrange, any type of firefight we get into, or close call, and have that, that adrenaline that kind of goes through your hands. You kind of trying to shake that off. I had that like for years and years going down range. And then on this one, I mean, just about to shoot a couple of people. I'm not at war. I'm here in Texas. And I just didn't care. I honestly didn't. I didn't have that adrenaline dump. It was just, I put about as much emotion into it as, my grocery bag ripping or anything. I mean, there was nothing. And so that was my first indication that something was off. I just didn't have any emotion for that.
Within yourself, did you actually recognize, you thought, hang on a minute, this isn't right, I should be feeling something here. I'm just about to pop a couple of blokes and I'm not bothered about it.
Not at all.
And all this anger's built up, and it's quite a common feeling. A lot of guys you speak to who've got PTSD, who are having problems, it is the anger, and it's almost that lack of empathy that they've got. So
yeah.
What's it like in the US? Over in the UK, there's been a real lack of help for veterans, mental health, PTSD. It's brushed under the carpet, or they try and medicate it. People don't talk about it. It's kind of like a slap around the head. Just get on with your life. But this last couple of years, there does feel like there's been a marked change where people are talking about it. It's not something to be embarrassed about. Go and get help for it, and because there's been a lot of suicides and totally unnecessary. How have the US sort of dealt with it? Have you got a better track record than us?
I'm not sure about that. But one thing I did realize was that something did have to be done. My way of contributing back to that was 2015. Started a nonprofit, We Defy Foundation. And it was... so there was a guy that came in. His name is Joey Bosick. He was a triple amputee. He was an MP in Iraq and got hit with an IED. And he lost his right arm, both his legs. And he came to school trying to sign up his daughter for classes. And we ended up talking for a bit, and both of us were at Fort Bragg. We knew some of the same people, so it ended up being like an hour and a half conversation instead of like a quick meet and greet. And I proposed, I'm like, you ever tried jiu-jitsu yourself? And he said, yeah, well, he used to be 6'3", and big into martial arts at the time, more stand-up stuff. But he had become very, he had tried going and trying jiu-jitsu. The problem is that the instructor was more than willing to take his money, but not, help him out with, the differences of someone having, no legs in jiu-jitsu. So that was holding him back. So, I gave him my word. I'm like, hey, if you can be patient with me, I can be patient with you. And for me, it was very interesting because I got to relearn how to do something that I've done for a very long time, and looking at a completely different aspect. And so he showed up, and I had written down 8 pages of notes, front and back of the, and I was just trying to come up with ideas of, how I could train him, with the physical capabilities that he has. Well, he showed up the first day. I told him, okay, see you tomorrow, and he showed up. And so we just kept going for about 6 months, until he felt, comfortable of, rolling with, other people. And then he started joining class, and before you know it, he lost like 38 pounds, and, he saw a light in him that, he hadn't seen in years. And, talking to his mom, it's like, he's got like this whole new, drive in life. It was amazing. And come to find out, there was just a lot of different advantages to the sport itself. It was, problem solving. It was, the camaraderie. It was, it was still a combat sport. So, veterans could identify with it. But it's definitely, jiu-jitsu is by far the most compassionate, combat sport there is. It definitely allows you to, if need be compassionate, but at the same time, it can be brutal as well. But it's all by the choice of the practitioner. So it has a lot of different attributes, and we figured that, it helped him out a lot. It even helped me out. And so we decided to try to share that. And so we started that 5 years ago. Now we have over 300 locations, affiliations. I think it's actually close to 400, nationwide. We've put over 200 veterans to the program, since then. And we've got, ambassadors throughout the entire U.S. A few years ago, the reason why I was actually in England was I met with Sam Sheriff with Reorg, and at the Royal Marines Jiu-Jitsu. And, I was able to basically just give them all the blueprints for WeDefy, and they pretty much created a mirror image of WeDefy Foundation for the veterans in the UK. So him and his Mark Armrod.
I know Mark. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a great guy. Matter of fact, this was awesome.
His book.
Awesome book.
Yeah. Just got his MBE actually off the Queen a few weeks ago.
What's that?
He got his MBE. He's a member of the British Empire. So
yes. I saw that. Incredible. Just great guys all around that did a phenomenal work in such a short time frame. You can tell. I mean, it's just the passion for what they're doing is just oozing out of them. And be honest with you, I mean, I'm proud to even just to know them. Love seeing what they're doing for the veterans, and it's overflown so much that we've kind of gotten the ear of the guys down in Australia. So there's veteran grappling run by Scott Steer in Australia, and and so it's catching on, in a big way. It's not the way, of course, it's a way, but it's a way that we found to be very successful.
I think that's it. If you can get results from what you're doing, something you love, something you're passionate about, and you can see the changes it makes in people's lives, that's all people want.
Absolutely.
You get that satisfaction. So have you turned this into an actual business now then? Is it your full-time job is BJJ?
So I've had my own school since 2011. 2015, we started the foundation, and I was the vice president, director, and then relations. And then I have another business that I make gun sights for pistols. And that was at the time. I was burning the candle at both ends, because I was still training, still competing, trying to run the business, the nonprofit, and the sites going. So it started becoming overwhelming. I didn't want to lack attention to what needed attention, but also was running out of time to do that. And so on top of that, and then trying to manage my home life, it became very difficult. I actually stepped down from the board last year in 2019, and turned it over to phenomenal group of guys that are doing amazing things with Weedify now. So I couldn't be happier. And they're doing much better than I possibly could ever do. Just they can devote the time to it, and they have some phenomenal ideas that definitely coming from a different aspect. So everything kind of worked out great. I still get to kind of dabble into it as still being the founder, still involved in it, but only as much as I can handle. So it's been really great working with these guys.
If anyone wants to look at more into the Weedify Foundation, look at any branding, they can buy any T-shirts, what have you. Where do they go?
You can go to weedifyfoundation.org. I know that Sam's got his at Reorg Jiu-Jitsu Foundation. You can Google search any of those. Veteran Grappling down in Australia. I'm not sure if so we just got a new, because we got so much more merchandise. We have a direct ship now. I'm not sure about overseas shipping, but I think we do. But I'm not sure.
Sure, we sort something out. And so, moving forward, where do you see life taking you now? What's your sort of new focus?
Wow. I don't know. For the Weedify aspect of it, I'd love to do. So one of the things that Sam and I had discussed is, kind of going around. He's a black belt as well. Promoting it through different, different installations, military installations, kind of show them the benefits of that. It's definitely something I'd like to do once this whole COVID thing is over. We had thought of the possibility of going down to Australia, in the future, doing the same thing there, kind of giving the experience and, the testament, how well the program works, and try to get more people involved in that. The Parasec Sites is the other, is the site company that I'm running. I just released last month, actually. And so trying to develop that, trying to build that one as much as I can as well. And actually right before this whole COVID thing, I was actually about to expand to a larger gym, but I kind of shut it down. So hopefully that'll take over as well. And I'll be able to actually pursue that, and things kind of go back to semi-normal, at least so much doing business-wise that I can actually, manage it as a normal business. That'd be nice.
The new normal, whatever that will be for 2021. And do you find in the UK, you're sort of touching on your weapons side of things there with the sites? I mean, it's not a big business over here because we've got a lot, so much gun control. It's ridiculous. Even just getting a shotgun, you've got to be able to fill out a 6-month sort of application process. And firearms have been banned here, pistols now for probably about 15 years, and automatic. You can't have anything over here, even if you've got a valid reason. Have you seen any of that sort of creeping into the US? Any of the gun control?
You hear it all the time, but honestly, not much has changed. My personal opinion on it, I don't think you need any more new regulations. I just feel that they need to really enforce. And when you actually see guys going in with a camera and people saying, literally on the camera to the guy that's selling the gun, that person is underage, and they still sell it to them anyway, or they have a record and they still sell it to them anyway, that's where it becomes problematic. If they the rules that are in place right now, I think are well enough. It's just, you have to enforce them. And that's where I feel things are failing the most. Do I feel that, that people shouldn't be, armed? Well, in a perfect world, if you said, okay, I don't mind turning in on my weapons, as long as you can say, oh, the criminals are going to turn in on the weapons.
Yeah.
Well, that's where it becomes problematic. The definition of a criminal, someone doesn't follow the law. So what you're doing is disarming everyone that has done, what they need to do legally to purchase that. And they abide by the law. So, in order for me to carry, I have my concealed carry license, and I had to actually go to that. Yeah. The other thing I think is that the most, in my opinion, there should be more training for the individual to get their concealed carry as well. Not just the legalities, but actually how to shoot. A lot of the different aspects of it. How much training? Well, they should at least be able to shoot, 10 feet away without closing their eyes.
I think there's a statistic, isn't there, that if most people, if they pull out a weapon, a knife or a gun, and they haven't got the training, usually it's themselves who end up getting injured by that weapon rather than whoever they're trying to take it out with. So sort of starting to close things down, your forecast for 2021, big changes are obviously afoot in your country. You've got Trump on his way out and Biden on his way in. You see that as a positive, as a negative? We've only got a few minutes on this one, so I imagine you've got a big opinion.
I've always been anti-Trump, but I'm not pro-Biden, so that kind of puts me in a bad spot altogether. I honestly, looking at, I was honestly and genuinely ashamed that those were our candidates, to be honest. Watching them debate, one of my best friends from Germany, I got a call. I was like, don't say a word. Don't say a fucking thing. And he just couldn't stop laughing. I was like, it was like two toddlers fighting at the debates. This is running our country. Literally the most, one of the most powerful countries in history. And we got them bickering like children. Yeah. I couldn't wrap my head around that. So, when it came to voting, and it just felt like, okay, you can choose gonorrhea or syphilis. Which one do you want?
It is amazing. You can have a country of your size with God knows how. What's the population there? It's like 150 million or something. It's a huge country. And we're similar over here. We've got Boris Johnson, probably Trump's love child. They look very similar. But I suppose he's doing what he can. We're looking forward to obviously getting over to America next year because it is such a great place, and I want to bring my family over and travel the States. And we're talking about actually coming over to Texas. My cousin lives in New York, and he's just got married, and he's going to rent out a ranch, and we're going to do we're going to try and live that American dream for a few weeks. And so, hopefully,
if you come down to Texas, man, definitely give me a heads up and take you out to the range. Without
a doubt. And obviously, if you're over here doing your stuff with the BJJ, and love to have you here, come on over.
Absolutely. Appreciate that.
We'll get the shotgun out and a few beers and have some fun with it.
That's always a recipe for a good time.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate your time tonight. It's been great to hear your journey. And it's
thank you, Adam. Listening
to someone from America, we're so similar. We call you our cousins, and I think we all go through that same journey. We might wear a different flag on our arm, but we're all the same. We're very close knit, and I think what you've done, especially for the veterans and the BJJ, especially actually knowing people that's helped over here, that's a fantastic achievement. I think you should be very proud of yourself.
Oh, thank you.
So, I'd just like to say health and happiness for 2021, and all the best for everything that comes.
All right. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
And you, buddy. Thank you. That was Alan Shabaro. What a great story and journey he's just taken us on. It's really interesting that we're getting engagement from all sides of the world now. When we look at sort of the questions we're getting from as far across as Australia through to the States. And so we really want to embrace all of the veteran and the community as a wider whole out there. So if you want to come on the show, if you want to discuss the story and take us on your journey, we'd be delighted to hear from you. So that was Alan Shabaro. If you want to follow his journey more, find out more, then why don't you go to shebarojj.com and you can see where he's at. He's also on Instagram, so you can search Alan Shabaro and you'll come up with his page there, and you can follow him and you can engage with him. So thanks, Alan, for coming on, and obviously all the great stuff you're doing with veterans and others. moving forward, you can still follow us on all the usual platforms, Instagram, social media, Twitter, Facebook. So why don't you sort of head on over there and follow us. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or go on to Spotify, Amazon Music and other streaming platforms. But from us, that's another episode of our show completed. So we look forward to seeing you again soon.